Hello everybody, I'm John Axdorf from Brooklyn Radio's Stars Over Surrey, and welcome to my Constellation of the Month. So let's go over to my laptop and I'll take you through some details of the constellation. Okay, so here we are at my suggested constellation for the month of February, and it's one of the most recognisable constellations in the night sky. I'm sure you have. Here's the lines to help you. It is, of course, Orion. Easily identifiable really by that belt across the middle. 3 stars in a row, relatively close together, marking the Belt of Orion. Okay, let's find out how useful it is to find your way to other stars in the sky, other constellations. So the belt is often used as the pointer to what the sailors used to call the dog star, Sirius, a really important navigational star and the brightest star in the northern hemisphere. The belt can also be used if you point the other way. That takes you up to Taurus the bull. And if you were to curve that line, it would take you up to the brightest star in Taurus called Aldebaran. We can use the end star of the belt going up through Betelgeuse to point you off towards the twins, Gemini. And going across the shoulders, that points you to Procyon, which is the brightest star of Canis Minor. The little dog. Sirius is the major star of Canis Major, the big dog. So Orion really helpful to find your way around the neighbouring constellations. So always there's legends. There you see, of course, Aldebaran as the eye of the bull here. Lots of legends about Orion, as you can see from the text. One thing that the stories do agree on was that he was killed by a scorpion. So Orion is the other side of the sky from Scorpius. So the scorpion is always chasing him around, but never catching up. So where do we find it in the night sky? Well, it's well placed this month, very well placed indeed. So look south at about 10 o'clock and that's where you're going to find it. Just a slightly larger, enlarged view, just to show you the neighbouring constellations. There's the twins up there. Here is Taurus. Here is Canis Major, the big dog. And Canis Minor that I mentioned, really only a couple of stars making up that constellation with Procyon there. Okay, now let's have a look inside to see what objects, and there's quite a few really interesting objects within the constellation. So probably most famously is the Orion Nebula, which Messier in his catalogue numbered 42. There is an adjacent small nebula right next to it, which has been given a separate number of M43. 1/3 Messier object, another nebula just off here, also associated with a couple of bright stars within it. But a very good nebula within here is called the Horsehead. That's quite famous, but it is really difficult to see visually, except with very large telescopes and appropriate filters, or with long exposure astrophotography. We'll see a picture of that shortly. What appears to be just a fuzzy patch in the middle of the sword of Orion down here is this Orion Nebula. But in fact, it's been given the number or name Theta Orionis, because originally it was just thought to be a star. So when you look into the nebula, you'll see that what appears to be a fuzzy star is in fact made up of several stars and that nebula. Lambda up here is also a multiple star, easily spotted as multiple through binoculars. So here's a picture from the Anglo-Australian observatory telescopes of both of those nebulas, M42, the Great Nebula in Orion, and this is where those multiple stars are. And up here is M43, shown enlarged over this side. And some details, as you can see, in the text below. Here's the other nebula, M78. Now, let's have a look at another picture of that Orion Nebula. As you can see, this astro image, to bring out the nebulosity, has used very long exposure. So that means that the stars in the middle there are overexposed, so they're blown out, just giving you that white patch. So let's have change the exposure a little bit and have a look inside that little area. And what you see under a stronger telescope is this. The stars that are in that fuzzy patch can be made out. So that one star is broken down into these two sections. This part is called theta 1 and this part theta 2. But as you can see, certainly down here, theta 2 is broken down into these three separate stars, A, B and C. And if we peer inside here, theta 1, we'll see that it's actually got a lozenge sort of shape, and it's called the trapezium. And that is made up of four principal stars, here labelled A, B, C and D. But with a good telescope you can make out even more. With my large telescope I can certainly see the E and F stars, but I'm not convinced I've seen G as yet. I shall be trying next time I look at that part of the sky. Now here are the belt stars, again under a time-lapsed photograph, to bring out the fact that it's not just those few stars. There's masses of fainter stars there, as can be seen. But those three stars are named Alnitak, Alnilam and Mintaka. But down here, this is where we find the Horsehead Nebula, and this brighter object here is known as the Flame Nebula. I think you can see even from here why it gets its name, the Horsehead, but let's take a closer look. And there you can see. So it's actually made up of dust clouds and dark nebulosity, not lit from within and marked by other stars, but masking the brightness of the bright emission nebula that lies behind it. So giving us that sort of image of a dark horse's head against the brighter background. Now my friend John Evans took this photograph, and it really does show the huge number of stars in that part of the sky. In fact, there's so many there that you almost can't see the constellation of Orion. So I've popped in the lines just to remind you where that constellation is. So here you can see the fuzzy patch of the Great Nebula in Orion, and here is that nebulosity where the Flame Nebula and the Horse's Head is. More nebulosity up here around the head, and this loop here, it's called Barnard's loop. It's the remains of a supernova. a star that exploded, and as it died, it sloughed off its outer atmosphere in a shell. And this part is all that remains at the moment. The rest has just got dispersed. So there we are, Orion, my constellation for the month for February. Do get out there and have a look. Even with the naked eye, it's a fine part of the sky to see. Binoculars, so much better. And if you have a small telescope, then do please turn it on the Sword of Orion to see the nebula in the middle of that sword, just hanging there below the belt. Okay, enjoy.